I was standing in line at the campus print shop, staring at my phone and arguing with myself about whether I really needed a second copy of my graduation program, when my mom's name lit up the screen. It was 9:12 a.m., 2 days before my graduation. I remember the time because it's burned into my head now, like one of those moments you replay later and think, that's where everything went wrong. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something in my gut twisted, and I answered. "Jack," she said, breathless, like she'd been running. "I need you to come to the airport. Right now. I'm Jack, 23 years old, first in my family to graduate college." And at that moment, I honestly thought she was joking. My mom doesn't travel. She hates airports, hates crowds, hates being told what to do. So when I asked why she was even there, her voice dropped into this shaky whisper that immediately sent my heart into my throat. "I've been detained by security," she said. "I didn't do anything wrong, but they're not letting me leave. I don't know who else to call." I didn't even ask questions. I grabbed my backpack, left the papers on the counter, and walked straight out. The entire drive to the airport, my mind kept racing ahead to worst-case scenarios. I imagined her crying in some gray room, confused, maybe sick, maybe accused of something she didn't understand. I told myself this was what good sons did. They showed up. They didn't hesitate, especially not for the woman who raised them. That instinct to show up is probably my biggest flaw. For context, my family has always had a certain hierarchy. My mom runs the show emotionally. My dad passed away when I was in high school, and since then, everything revolves around keeping her calm, keeping the peace, keeping things from blowing up. My younger brother, Evan, sits comfortably at the center of that orbit. He's 20, loud, impulsive, and forever one bad decision away from a meltdown. And somehow, no matter what he does, it becomes everyone else's responsibility to manage his feelings. I've spent most of my life being the reasonable one, the buffer, the translator, the one who gets pulled aside and told, "You understand, right?" when something unfair happens. I understood when Evan dropped out of community college and moved back home. I understood when my mom quietly stopped asking him to contribute anything financially. I understood when every family dinner turned into a conversation about his plans, his stress, his potential, while mine were treated like background noise. Graduation was supposed to be different. For once, the attention was supposed to be on something I'd done. For years of working 2 part-time jobs, late nights, skipped trips, constant pressure to not fail because I couldn't afford to. I didn't make a big deal out of it, but inside, it meant everything. It was proof that I wasn't just the easy kid who could handle things on his own. I wanted them to see me. So when my mom called from the airport, fear cut straight through all of that. I sped the entire way there, rehearsing what I'd say to security, mentally pulling up my student ID like it would somehow help. I parked crooked, didn't even bother paying, and ran inside, scanning faces for hers. I didn't find her in a security office. I didn't find her crying or arguing with anyone in a uniform. I found her sitting at a cafe near baggage claim, calmly stirring sugar into a coffee. I stopped so fast I almost tripped. She looked up, saw me, and smiled. Not relieved, not shaken, just normal, like she'd invited me to meet her for lunch. "Oh good, you're here," she said. For a second, my brain refused to connect what my eyes were seeing. I actually asked, "Where are they?" because I still thought maybe she'd escaped or something. "Who?" she asked, genuinely confused. "The security people," I said. "You said you were detained." She waved her hand like I'd misunderstood a minor detail. "Oh, that. I just needed you to come quickly." I felt heat crawl up my neck. "Mom," I said slowly, "you told me you were detained. I thought something was wrong." "Well, something is wrong," she replied, lowering her voice and leaning in like this was some delicate secret. "Your brother is about to do something very stupid, and I need you to stop him." That's when the floor shifted under me. She explained it in pieces, casually, between sips of coffee. Evan had found out about a family issue. Her words. Something he wasn't supposed to know yet. Something she'd planned to tell him later, in a calmer setting, when he was in a better headspace. Apparently, he didn't take it well. Apparently, he'd been threatening to show up at my graduation and tell everyone the truth if she didn't fix it. And instead of handling that herself, instead of being honest or setting boundaries, she decided the solution was to lie to me, manufacture an emergency, and pull me into the middle of it 2 days before the most important moment of my life. I remember standing there, listening, nodding automatically, while something inside me quietly cracked. She talked about how fragile Evan was, how embarrassed the family would be if he caused a scene, how much pressure she was under. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't apologize. She just assumed I would help, the same way I always had. At one point, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're the only one he listens to, Jack," she said. "You've always been so good at calming him down." I pulled my hand back, slowly. I wanted to say something sharp. I wanted to say a lot of things. Instead, I asked, "What's the secret?" Her jaw tightened. "That's not important right now." That answer told me everything and nothing at the same time. As she kept talking, outlining her plan for me to call Evan, meet him, reason with him, I felt a strange clarity settle in. Not anger yet. Not revenge. Just the realization that this wasn't a one-off mistake. This was a pattern. A script I'd been playing my entire life, without questioning who wrote it or why I was always cast in the same role. I looked around the airport, at families hugging, people arriving, people leaving, everyone moving forward somewhere. And I realized that 2 days before I was supposed to walk across a stage and close one chapter of my life, my own mother had dragged me right back into the same old mess, without hesitation, without remorse. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Evan. "You better talk to Mom. She's running out of time." I stared at the screen, then up at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the calm, dependable son. I felt like a fuse had been lit, and whatever this family secret was, it was about to change everything. I didn't respond to Evan's text right away. I slid my phone face down on the cafe table and looked at my mom. Really looked at her, like I was seeing her for the first time instead of the version of her I'd carried around in my head for years. She was calm now, almost relieved, like the hardest part of her day was already over because I'd shown up. That realization stung more than the lie itself. "Tell me exactly what you want me to do," I said. She exhaled, dramatic and heavy. "I need you to talk to your brother. Today. He's emotional, Jack. He doesn't think before he speaks. If he shows up at your graduation and starts saying things, it'll humiliate all of us. Especially me." There it was. Not especially me. Especially her. I asked again about the secret. She dodged it again. Said it was complicated. Said Evan had misunderstood. Said it was about money and timing and things I didn't need to worry about right now. Every sentence was designed to keep me in the dark just long enough to still be useful. As we walked out of the airport together, she laid out the plan like this was some kind of team project. I'd meet Evan at the house. I'd calm him down. I'd remind him how important my graduation was, how this wasn't the time for drama. I'd promise him that Mom would explain everything soon, just not right now. She said it like she'd already written my lines for me. "What if he doesn't listen?" I asked. She smiled tightly. "He always listens to you." That sentence followed me all the way home. Evan didn't listen. The second I walked into the house, I could feel the tension. He was pacing the living room, phone in hand, eyes red like he hadn't slept. The TV was on but muted. Mom hovered behind me like a supervisor, waiting to see how I'd handle it. "So," Evan said, stopping in front of me. "She finally sent you." "I came on my own," I said. He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Sure you did." I tried the calm approach first. Told him Mom was stressed. Told him graduation wasn't the place for whatever argument he wanted to have. Told him we could talk things out privately. As I spoke, I realized how rehearsed I sounded, like I was reading from the same script I'd been handed my whole life. "You don't even know what you're defending," he snapped. That stopped me. "Then tell me." He glanced at Mom. She shook her head, just slightly. "A warning." "Tell him," I said, looking at her. She crossed her arms. "This is not how we're doing this." Evan scoffed. "Of course it's not. You never do anything when you say you will." I could feel my patience thinning. "Evan, what is going on?" He stepped closer to me, lowering his voice. "Did you know," he said slowly, "that Mom has been using the money Dad left for both of us? Not just bills, not emergencies. For herself." I turned to her. "Is that true?" She looked offended. "That's not fair." "That's not an answer," I said. She launched into a speech about sacrifices and stress and how hard it was to raise 2 boys alone. She said she deserved some flexibility. She said Evan was exaggerating. She said I was overreacting. Evan pulled out his phone and shoved it in my face. Bank statements, transfers, dates, amounts. I didn't understand all of it, but I understood enough to know this wasn't just a misunderstanding. What about my college savings? I asked quietly. Her silence was loud. I worked through school, I said. I took loans. You told me there was nothing left. You were capable, she said, like that explained everything. Evan needed more help. That sentence hit me harder than anything else that day. Evan laughed again, but there was no humor in it this time. See? This is why I'm done staying quiet. I'm not protecting her anymore. Mom panicked then, not because of what she'd done, but because of where Evan planned to say it. She grabbed his arm. You will not ruin your brother's graduation. He pulled away. I'm not ruining it. I'm telling the truth. In front of everyone who thinks you're some kind of saint. I stood there, feeling like the floor was tilting under me. Every memory started rearranging itself. Every time she praised Evan for needing her. Every time she told me to be patient. Every time my achievements were treated like conveniences instead of milestones. Why didn't you tell me? I asked her. She looked at me, and for a moment, her expression hardened into something cold. Because you would have judged me. That was the moment something in me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet internal shift. I realized I wasn't angry because she'd used the money. I was angry because she'd decided, over and over again, that I didn't deserve honesty, that I could be managed, lied to, deployed. Evan was pacing again, talking about showing receipts, about making a speech, about how no one ever listened to him. Mom turned to me, eyes wide, desperate. Jack, she said, grabbing my sleeve. You have to fix this. I pulled my arm free. For once, I said, I'm not fixing anything. Her face changed instantly. The warmth vanished. The pleading turned sharp. Don't be selfish. Selfish. 2 days before my graduation. After being lied to, manipulated, and used as damage control. Evan stopped pacing and stared at me. You're really going to let her get away with this? I didn't answer him either. That night, I went back to my apartment and didn't sleep. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from Mom. Messages from Evan. Some angry. Some pleading. Some guilt-laced reminders of everything she'd ever done for me. I ignored them all and stared at the ceiling, replaying every conversation I'd ever had with my family, seeing the patterns I'd refused to see before. The next morning, I got an email from the university. Subject line, graduation seating update. I opened it without thinking. And that's when I saw my mother's name listed as the primary contact for my ceremony details. A role I didn't remember assigning. A role that came with certain permissions. At the bottom of the email was a note. Changes have been requested. My stomach dropped. I stared at that email for a long time before I really understood what I was looking at. Graduation seating update. My mom's name. Primary contact. Changes have been requested. I hadn't authorized any changes. I hadn't even known she still had access. My first instinct was to call her. My second instinct was to throw my phone across the room. I ended up doing neither. I just sat on the edge of my bed, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor like it might give me an explanation that made sense. When I finally logged into the university portal, my hands were shaking. I told myself I was being paranoid. That maybe it was a small thing. Maybe she'd just asked about arrival times or parking passes. That was still the version of me that wanted to believe she wouldn't cross certain lines. She had crossed them. My originally submitted guest list had been altered. Seats rearranged. Evan's name had been moved closer to the front. Mine was untouched, technically, but the people I'd invited, the few friends who had supported me through late nights and finals, had been quietly pushed to overflow seating. And listed under special notes was a request to allow an unscheduled family statement after the ceremony. I actually laughed when I read that. Not because it was funny, but because my body didn't know what else to do. An unscheduled family statement. This was her solution. If Evan couldn't be controlled, she'd control the stage. I emailed the registrar immediately, trying to sound calm and professional while my chest felt like it was caving in. I explained that the changes were unauthorized. I asked how this had happened. I asked how to reverse it. The response came hours later. They apologized. They said the primary contact on file had verified identity and made the request. They said changes like this were unusual, but technically allowed. They said they could correct it, but only if the primary contact approved the reversal. I closed my laptop and sat there in silence. That was rock bottom for me. Not the yelling, not the lies, not even the money. It was the realization that my own graduation, the thing I'd been holding onto as proof that all the sacrifices had been worth it, had become another stage for my family's dysfunction. Another thing I was expected to surrender quietly to keep the peace. I didn't go home that day. I didn't answer my phone. I walked around campus for hours, aimless, watching other students take pictures in caps and gowns, laughing with their families, hugging parents who looked proud instead of threatened. I felt invisible, and stupid, and small. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I wrote everything down. Not to vent, not to rant. Just facts, dates, conversations, the airport call, the bank statements Evan showed me, the graduation changes. Every time my mom had said, "You're capable," as a reason not to help me. Every time I'd been told to calm Evan down instead of being allowed to feel my own anger. Seeing it all laid out stripped away the excuses. This wasn't chaos. It was a system, and I had been the pressure valve. I took a day off from everything. No family, no school emails, no graduation planning. I slept. I ate real food. I let myself feel how exhausted I was. Not tired, exhausted. Like someone who'd been carrying weight they never agreed to carry. On the second day, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't wake up empowered or angry or ready for revenge. I woke up clear. I realized that whether or not my graduation went the way I wanted, my life didn't have to keep following the same script. I couldn't control Evan. I couldn't control my mom. But I could control access. I could control information. I could stop being the middleman. The first thing I did was call the registrar again. This time, I asked about removing my mom as primary contact entirely. They hesitated at first, but once I verified my identity and explained the situation, they told me it was possible. Paperwork. A form. A short processing window. I filled it out immediately. The second thing I did was open my email and send a short message to my department advisor. I explained that there were family issues, that I might need flexibility, that I wanted confirmation that no one else could speak or act on my behalf during the ceremony. He replied within an hour. He congratulated me on my graduation. He told me he'd make sure everything was handled appropriately. That message hit me harder than I expected. A stranger, essentially, showing me more respect for my boundaries than my own family ever had. Evan texted me again that night. Long messages. Angry ones. He accused me of choosing mom, of abandoning him, of being weak. Then, 10 minutes later, another message apologizing, saying he didn't mean it, saying he was scared. I didn't respond. That was new, and it felt wrong and right at the same time. My mom called, left voicemails. Her tone shifted from panic to anger to wounded disbelief. She said she couldn't believe I was shutting her out like this. She said she'd never done anything to hurt me intentionally. She said I was blowing things out of proportion. I saved the voicemails. I didn't listen to them again. Instead, I started focusing on what came after graduation, something I'd been putting off because I was so busy surviving. I updated my resume. I followed up on applications I'd half forgotten about. I reached out to a professor who'd once told me I had potential if I ever believed it myself. One of those conversations turned into an interview, then another, then a quiet, unexpected offer that made my hands shake when I read it. Not a dream job, but a real one. A start. A chance to move out of the orbit I'd been stuck in. I didn't tell my family. For the first time, something good was happening that wasn't immediately absorbed into Evan's narrative or my mom's stress. It was mine. The night before graduation, I sat alone in my apartment with my cap and gown laid out on the chair. My phone buzzed with another message from my mom. "If you don't come talk to us tonight, don't expect things to go smoothly tomorrow." I didn't reply. I thought about everything I'd lost by staying silent all those years. Opportunities, confidence, peace, and I thought about what I might lose if I finally stopped playing along. Then I opened my laptop and checked the university portal one last time. My mom's name was gone. No primary contact. No special notes. No unscheduled statements. Just my name. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt something colder and sharper settle in my chest. Because I knew my mom wouldn't take this quietly. And I knew Evan wouldn't either. Graduation was in less than 12 hours. And for the first time, I wasn't worried about whether I could keep the peace. Graduation morning arrived quietly, which should have been my first warning. I woke up before my alarm, heart already racing, like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. Sunlight came through the blinds in thin lines, lighting up the cap and gown I'd laid out the night before. For a moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to my own breathing, grounding myself. No missed calls. No new messages. Nothing from Mom. Nothing from Evan. That silence wasn't peace. It was strategy. I showered, got dressed, and moved through the morning with a strange calm. Not happiness. Not dread. Focus. The kind that comes when you finally accept that something is going to happen whether you're ready or not. So you might as well be ready. On my way to campus, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. We need to talk before the ceremony. It's important. Please don't do this to your mother. I didn't reply. I didn't even ask who it was. I knew. When I arrived at the venue, everything looked exactly like it should. Students milling around in gowns, families lining up with cameras, staff directing people toward entrances. From the outside, it was a perfect, ordinary graduation day. That contrast almost made me dizzy, knowing what was sitting just beneath the surface. I checked in, got my seat assignment, and took my place with my classmates. As I sat down, I spotted Evan across the room. He wasn't in the section Mom had requested for him. He was further back, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the crowd like he was looking for an opening. When our eyes met, he looked away first. That was new too. I didn't see my mom right away, which meant she was waiting. She liked dramatic entrances, liked positioning herself so she could read a room before stepping into it. I'd watched her do it at school meetings, family gatherings, even funerals. Always just outside the center, ready to pivot. The ceremony started. Speeches. Applause. Names being read. I tried to stay present, but my attention kept drifting outward, cataloging exits, faces, movements. I felt like I was watching a play I'd already read the script for, except someone had changed a few key scenes without telling me. Then I heard my name. I stood, walked across the stage, shook hands, accepted my diploma. The applause was polite, warm. I smiled for the camera. And for a brief, surreal moment, everything else faded away. I had done this. I had earned it. No one could take that part from me. As I stepped back into line, my phone buzzed again. She's crying. You don't have to do this. Just let her speak. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without reading the rest. The ceremony ended without incident. No shouting. No public meltdown. No secret revealed to a captive audience. I could practically feel my mom's frustration from across the room as people stood, clapped, hugged their graduates. The stage she tried to claim had closed without her. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Outside the venue, families gathered in clusters. Photos. Congratulations. Laughter. I stood with a couple of friends, taking pictures, answering questions about plans after graduation. I kept my responses vague, non-committal. My life had already been treated like communal property once. I wasn't offering previews anymore. That's when my mom approached. She looked composed, smiling. Anyone watching would have thought this was a proud mother coming to congratulate her son. But I knew that expression, the tightness around the eyes, the way her smile didn't reach them. Jack, she said, pulling me into a hug before I could step back. I'm so proud of you. I didn't hug her back. I didn't push her away either. I just stood there still. We need to talk, she said softly. Alone. Not today, I replied. Her smile faltered for half a second. It won't take long. I said not today. People were watching now. That mattered to her. I could see her recalculating, switching tactics. Evan appeared at her side, eyes darting between us. You really think you can just ignore this? He said. After everything? I looked at him calmly. Yes. That answer seemed to knock the wind out of him more than any argument would have. They left shortly after, stiff and silent, while I stayed behind and let myself enjoy the rest of the afternoon. But even as I laughed and posed for photos, my mind was already moving ahead. Because I knew this wasn't over. My mom didn't lose control and walk away. She regrouped. That evening, my phone rang. A number I recognized this time. Jack, my aunt said. Your mother is beside herself. She says you humiliated her. There it was. The narrative was already spreading. I listened quietly as my aunt explained how worried everyone was, how Mom had been under so much pressure, how Evan was acting out because he's hurt, how maybe I could just come over and smooth things out like I always did. I thanked her for calling and told her I'd think about it. Then I called someone else. The professor who'd helped me with my job lead answered on the second ring. We talked logistics, start dates, relocation, paperwork. The conversation was straightforward, professional, respectful. Everything my interactions with my family weren't. By the time we hung up, a plan was forming. Not revenge yet. Preparation. Over the next few days, I did everything quietly. I secured my documents. Birth certificate, social security card, financial records. I changed passwords, updated contact information. I opened a new bank account at a different institution and began transferring what little savings I had, piece by piece. I also did something I'd never done before. I went back to those bank statements Evan had shown me and asked questions. Carefully, methodically. I spoke to someone at the bank, then another person, then a legal aid office that offered free consultations for recent graduates. I didn't accuse. I didn't threaten. I just asked what my options were if money intended for me had been misused. The answers were interesting. Meanwhile, the messages from my family escalated. Mom alternated between wounded and furious. Evan swung between apologetic and hostile. Extended relatives chimed in, each one carrying a slightly altered version of the story that somehow always painted me as the problem. I stopped responding entirely. Silence, I learned, is unsettling to people who rely on your reactions. One night, Evan showed up at my apartment unannounced. I didn't open the door, but I listened as he knocked, then pounded, then leaned against it and slid down to the floor. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said through the door. "If you don't fix this, she's going to lose everything." That sentence stuck with me, not because it scared me, because it confirmed something I'd been circling for days. This wasn't about family harmony. This was about consequences. And for the first time in my life, they were afraid those consequences might finally land somewhere other than on me. I didn't answer Evan. I waited until he left, then sat on the floor with my back against the door, heart pounding, mind racing. I wasn't planning to make a public scene. I wasn't planning to yell or expose secrets out of spite. But I was done protecting people who had never protected me. And as I looked at the folder on my desk, filled with documents, notes, timelines, and names, I realized I wasn't reacting anymore. I didn't make the next move out of anger. That surprised even me. I slept on it. 2 nights, actually. I kept replaying Evan's words in my head. She's going to lose everything. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how revealing that statement was. Not we're going to lose everything. Not the family. Just her. Everything had always been framed that way. Her stability, her reputation, her control. And for years, I'd been trained to believe that protecting those things was my responsibility. It wasn't. On Monday morning, I walked into the legal aid office with a folder under my arm and a calm I'd never felt before. I laid everything out. The bank statements, the original paperwork from my dad's estate, the timeline of withdrawals, the notes I'd taken after speaking with the bank. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't editorialize. I just told the truth and answered questions. The lawyer, a woman about my mom's age, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "You're not asking for revenge," she said. "You're asking for accountability." That word landed differently than I expected. She explained my options. None of them were dramatic. None involved public spectacle or shouting matches or surprise speeches. Just paperwork. Letters, deadlines, quiet processes that moved forward whether emotions were ready or not. I chose the option that protected me and forced the truth into daylight. The formal notice went out that afternoon. My mom received it first. Then Evan. Then, because of how things had been structured, a copy went to a couple of extended family members who had been listed as secondary contacts on the original estate paperwork. People she had always assumed would never look too closely. She called me less than an hour later. I let it go to voicemail. Her message wasn't angry. It wasn't pleading. It was panicked. "Jack," she said, voice shaking. "There has been a mistake. We can fix this. You don't understand what you're doing. Please call me." I didn't. Evan texted next. "What did you do?" I still didn't respond. Instead, I went to work. My new job had started that morning, and for the first time, my life felt like it existed somewhere other than inside my family's chaos. I learned names. I set up my desk. I drank bad office coffee and listened to conversations that had nothing to do with guilt or obligation or managing someone else's emotions. By the end of the day, I had 7 missed calls. That night, my aunt showed up at my apartment. Not Evan. Not my mom. Her. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't asked for, eyes sharp and assessing. "Why didn't you come to us first?" she asked. "I did," I said. "For years. You just didn't listen." She sighed. "Your mother is in real trouble." "I know. She says she was planning to tell you everything. She's been saying that my whole life." That seemed to take some wind out of her. She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. You know this will change things permanently. Yes, I said. That's the point. She left not long after, quieter than she'd arrived. The fallout came in waves. First, the financial one. Accounts were frozen pending review. Questions were asked. Documentation was requested. My mom's carefully maintained image as the long-suffering, selfless parent began to crack under the weight of facts she couldn't explain away. Then came the family reckoning. Group chats went silent, then restarted, then fractured. Some relatives defended her out of habit. Others went quiet when they realized they might be asked uncomfortable questions too. Evan tried to position himself as both victim and whistleblower, depending on who he was talking to, but without my participation, his story didn't land the way he expected. And then there was my mom. She didn't scream at me again. She didn't accuse me of betrayal. She stopped calling entirely. That silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Weeks passed, then months. The legal process resolved the way processes like that usually do, slowly, methodically, without ceremony. Funds that should never have been touched were accounted for. Not all of them could be recovered. That hurt. But what mattered more was that the truth was now documented. Permanent. Unarguable. Evan moved out of her house not long after. Reality hit him harder than he expected once there was no one left to shield him from consequences. We haven't spoken since. I hear things through other people. Enough to know he's struggling. Not enough to pull me back in. My mom sent me one last message. I read it weeks after it arrived. She wrote that she never meant to hurt me. That she thought I was strong enough to handle things. That she didn't realize how much she'd taken until it was gone. I believed she meant it. I also believed it was too late. I didn't reply. My life now is quieter. Smaller in some ways. Bigger in others. I go to work. I pay my bills. I make plans without asking permission. I celebrate milestones without bracing for interference. The constant tension I'd lived with for so long is gone. And in its absence, I've learned something unexpected. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just shows up one day and stays. I still have my diploma. It's framed on my wall, slightly crooked because I hung it myself without measuring. Every time I look at it, I don't think about the ceremony or the drama or the secret that almost consumed it. I think about the moment I stopped being the family's solution and started being my own person. And I don't regret it for a second.